Đợi tí, cái gì đấy? Ban. Jesus God!
Rambo, the video game, is a boring, shallow, linear, broken piece of shit that never should have seen the light of day. I am here to tell you that this game is Ride to Hell Retribution levels of bad. In fact, while I have not played such 2014 classics as Sonic Boom and Duck Dynasty, there is no possible way that they could be as bad as this. We're going to split this review into two separate parts. First, I will review Rambo as a video game, and then I will review it as an adaptation of the films. Let's get started. To understand why Rambo is such an atrocity, we have to understand that this game had almost no budget. It is clear from the cutscenes, to the game mechanics, to the actual graphics themselves, that the studio who developed this, Teon, had to have been operating on a micro budget. This developer, Teon, is no stranger to bad games. In 2012, a Metacritic equivalent in Japan called Kusoge Game of the Year Wiki, which translates to Shit Game of the Year Wiki, nominated their masterpiece, Heavy Fire Afghanistan, as one of the worst games of the year, citing that the game's QuickTime events made no sense, the enemy AI was stupid, and the game is overall shallow. After reading that, I came to the conclusion that these people are one-shit ponies because the criticisms of Heavy Fire Afghanistan sound exactly like the ones I have of Rambo. Rambo starts us out with one of the worst looking cutscenes of this generation. You thought Bink Video was bad?
I'm here.
No. Whatever codec they use to compress the cutscenes in this game is far worse than Bink Video. The amount of artifacting is ridiculous, and nearly every cutscene looks like needs more JPEG. The worst part about this is the inconsistency. Some objects in the cutscenes look fine, and others look horrible. Regardless of codec issues, these cutscenes are still horrible due to this game's shit graphics. When you open the launcher to this game, you have three graphics options: low, medium, or high, which is what you'd have to be to enjoy this game and think that it actually looks good. Rambo features graphics that were outdated in 2007. Add this to the fact that the cutscenes are compressed beyond belief, and you wind up with things looking like this.
Relay the command. Rambo's found one of ours.
Dragonfly 1, this is a direct order from Wolfden. Abort your rescue mission immediately.
We're not! For Christ's sake, we've got him in sight!
Abort!
There's men down there. Our men. You mean your men? Now sit down, sir.
Okay, we've just established that the game looks like shit. So, you must be asking, what does it sound like? Well, this game somehow manages to sound worse than it looks. The only good part about the sound is the music, but the game manages to fuck even that up. The original fantastic score for the Rambo films by Jerry Goldsmith serves as the background music for the game. However, the sound design in this game is so abysmal and all over the place that you seriously think at various times that the sound is glitching. There's a mission in the game that plays the same fucking song 5 times in the course of 7 minutes. Beyond that, I mentioned that the sound is all over the place. In the main menu, you can barely hear the main theme playing, but in certain levels, the sound is obnoxiously loud. Now, we have to talk about this game's voice acting. Oh my god. I thought that absolutely nothing could beat the voice acting in Phoenix Games' Animal Soccer World, and while Rambo is not as bad, it comes so fucking close. They mixed in new voice acting with lines taken directly out of the films. So, on top of the new voice acting sounding like it was recorded by interns and the old sound clips being ripped from a DVD, we wind up with scenes like this.
Wriggling like a damn earthworm! Don't worry about the soap, Ward.
Come on, guys. Can't you see he's got a screw loose?
Can't you see I don't give a damn? Shave him dry!
Hold still. You don't want your throat slit, do you?
Wow, with voice acting like that, Rambo would fit right into Skyrim as the next Dragonborn. Here's an example of what happens when you mix the game's terrible graphics with the film's original audio.
You had a lot of friends, didn't you? Well, now you're completely alone. What do you want? I want to know where the Stinger missiles are. Close. Just how close are they? In your ass.
And finally, here's an example of what happens when you take the film's original audio, you edit it terribly, and you mix in this game's disgusting sound design.
I'll take you a few miles up the road. There's a truck stop there. You can eat something.
Is there any law against me doing something here?
Me. I'm stopping. We don't need people like you in our town.
One thing you'll notice about this game is that it's seemingly self-aware of just how bad it is, which is probably why it gives you the option to use subtitles. If this game had no subtitles, the audio would be completely impossible to understand. Let's talk about character models. Rambo and Colonel Trautman are the only characters in the game that bear any resemblance to their film counterparts, and that is seriously stretching it. Rambo looks deformed. His arms look too skinny for his body, and his head too big for his torso. His hair also looks like a big plastic wig, and the way his face looks, you'd think he'd suffered a stroke. The other models are even worse. This company must have had models lying around for years they didn't use, and they decided to stick them in this game. Does this look anything like Teasel? No, it fucking doesn't. So, we've checked off sound and video on a list of things this game fails at, so what about gameplay? If you guessed, it blows, you're right. I recently criticized Velvet Assassin for being a boring, linear, and overall shallow mess of a game, but I did not know the meaning of boring, linear, and shallow until I played this. Instead of a badass first-person shooter, Rambo is an on-rail shooter with a combination of some of the shittiest game mechanics I've ever seen. Shooting itself is fine, I guess. There's no problem with that really. The problem comes when you mix in the following elements: a reload minigame, a horrible slow motion mechanic, and quick time events. Anyone who's been a fan of mine for some time knows that I think quick time events are cheap and unnecessary in video games. You can only imagine my excitement when I encountered a level in Rambo that is comprised entirely out of quick time events. It gets even worse when the game incorporates the quick time events in the level. You want to jump over something or dodge it? Quick time event. You actually want to use stealth? Quick time event. You want to throw someone ammo? Quick time event. Like I mentioned, the game is seemingly aware of how terrible it is, so because it probably realized that no one likes quick time events, when it introduces the perk system, the first perk you get is the ability to pass all the quick time events. Before we get back to the shooting mechanics, let's talk about this stupid system. Skills and perks is an absolute joke. In addition to being able to skip QTEs, there's perks that give you health for certain shots you take. The problem with this is that there's a perk here that only applies to a single fucking level. If you have this perk equipped in any of the other levels, it'll do nothing. The game doesn't warn you that it's not supposed to work in other levels, it just lets you keep using it until you realize that it's useless. The skill system is horrible because there's no goddamn variation. It's literally just, you had 1 grenade before, upgrade to 2 grenades now, and so on and so forth. Let's get back to the shooting. When you run out of ammo, you're forced into a stupid minigame where if you click the reload button at the right time, your clip either jams and you get 25% of your ammo, you get normal and it refills your entire clip, or you get perfect accuracy and your clip becomes 2 times larger. Let's ignore how illogical this is and focus on this as a pure mechanic. This seriously does nothing but hinder the actual gameplay. If your gun jams and you're facing a bunch of enemies, you're fucked! And even when you're not facing any enemies, it's just an annoying thing to have to pay attention to. Not to mention how it completely cheapens the gameplay because you can hide behind cover and continuously reload until you get perfect accuracy and get to 100% in your clip. Now, there's another problem with this which feeds into the last mechanic that makes the shooting bad, and that's Wrath Mode. Since there's no health pickups in the game, to recuperate health, Rambo uses Wrath Mode, in which the more enemies you kill, the more health you get. The entire game goes into slow motion mode, and Rambo screams like he's getting the tip of his penis pulled off. Wrath Mode is largely terrible, and here's why. If you've ever played Fear and gone into slow motion mode, you'll notice that there's a meter at the bottom. The meter stops when you stop using slow motion and start refilling again. This is not the case in Rambo. If you use Wrath Mode for even a single second and stop, the entire gauge disappears and you have to start from nothing. God forbid you run out of ammo during Wrath Mode, because if you do, not only do you have to reload during this, but you also have to play the minigame, which takes even more time, and by the time you're reloaded, Wrath Mode is over and you haven't gained any health. By the way, if I hadn't already mentioned it, this game is broken beyond belief. There's certain cutscenes where you can activate Wrath Mode for no fucking reason at all. It's worth mentioning, or not really worth mentioning, that you're not always shooting enemies with a gun. Sometimes you get a bow and arrow, which is another infuriating cheap way for this game to waste your time. The shooting is absolutely broken because it's very floaty, and when you shoot an enemy, the physics in the game go crazy. Tomb Raider, this is not. I understand the need to have variation in a video game. It's what makes games unique. But if all the variation in the goddamn game does nothing but hurt the gameplay and the amount of fun you're having, don't put it in the game. The reload minigame, Wrath Mode, the quick time events and bow and arrow sections, they're horrible. Terrible execution on all fronts. Speaking of execution, the enemies in this game are idiots. Various times they will just stand in the middle of the screen and wait for you to shoot them. There are no smart enemies in this game, and when the game gets hard on the last level, it's not because the enemies are smart, it's because the last level throws every single enemy in the fucking game at you, and tanks, and helicopters. Before we talk about how the last level is the biggest piece of shit in the game, we have to talk about the overall difficulty of the game. The game is quite easy on medium difficulty. The levels aren't hard, the enemies are easy to kill, and if you die, it's most likely due to cheap mechanics like the bow and arrow sections. There's also a repeat feature in the game in which you only get 5 chances to do something. I hate to use the word cheat again, but that's what this is. Why the fuck do I only get 5 chances to do a certain level? Oh, right. Because this game is only 3 hours long and you needed to pad it out somehow. So, everything is pretty simple until the last level in the game, in which it becomes batshit crazy and seriously throws everything at you. There's guys with flamethrowers, people throwing grenades, which you somehow have to shoot out of the sky. There's miniguns, there's tanks that activate quick time events, there's a helicopter that shoots at you, and on top of all this, there's regularly a commander, which is an enemy that makes all the other enemies on the screen 2 times more powerful. It's ridiculous. This specific section of the game is so absurd that it doesn't even use the repeat feature. There's infinite repeats of this section, which tells me, again, that the people who made this knew how fucking bad it was and decided to try and fix it in their own shitty way. They failed, just like this entire game fails on almost every single level imaginable. Graphics? Bad. Sound quality? Shit. Gameplay? A clusterfuck. You'd think it'd be one of the simplest tasks in the world to make a Rambo video game, but these people managed to screw it all up. Now, let's take a look at Rambo as an adaptation of the films. First Blood is a film about a Vietnam veteran named John Rambo, whom upon returning to America after the Vietnam War, tries to track down a friend of his he served with named Delmar Berry. After finding out that Barry is dead, Rambo aimlessly drifts around until he ends up in a town where the police are complete dicks to him. They push him, and he pushes back.
You want a war you can't win? Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing.
What?
A good supply of body bags.
This video game does a terrible job of explaining what the hell is going on. It cuts off parts that are important and flat out depicts Rambo like the psychopath that everyone in the movie thinks he is. There's a mission in this game where you face a literal army of cops and you can kill them all at your discretion. Not to mention, this game's shitty graphics do a terrible job of depicting Rambo himself. Rambo is a sympathetic character and Sylvester Stallone did an amazing job in the role.
It's over, Johnny. It's over!
Nothing is over! You just don't turn it off! He's laying there, he's fucking screaming, there's pieces of him all over me, just like this, and I'm trying to pull him off, you know, and it's my friend that's all over me! He's got blood and everything, and I'm trying to hold him together, I put him together, his fucking insides keep coming out, and nobody would help!
So not only do they butcher First Blood's story, but they completely destroy any traits which Rambo had that made him relatable or sympathetic to the audience. I will admit that after First Blood, Rambo does become a cartoon character whose entire goal is, kill all the commies in your way, but this game manages to fuck even that up. The game should have just used footage from the movies, because the 3D with the old voice acting is so jarring that you're hardly ever paying attention to what's going on, and when you do, you realize that the graphics simply cannot emote what the actors did in the films. And, to this game's credit, it does actually replicate the environments from the movie fairly well, so the 2D to 3D transition from the movies to the game wouldn't have been so jarring itself. At the end of the day, Rambo, the video game, is garbage. A complete failure of a video game and a cautionary tale to any developer that tries this specific formula ever again. Rambo, the video game, gets the final rating of, say it with me, rest in piss. That would be the greatest game if like Dick Mars— oh shit! I fucking knew it every fucking time in these elevators. Hey guys, DXFan619 here, and if you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. Don't forget to drop a like, and while you're at it, you can also check out the latest part of my Fear 2 Let's Play, in which I get the shit scared out of me. I've also started a Steam group, a DXFan619 Steam group that you can check out, and I also have a curator page up now, so if you've ever wanted to see what games that I would personally recommend, they're right there. So check all that stuff out if you can. Thank you guys for watching the video, and peace out.